Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Qualtrics XM Community Podcast. I'm Michael Cooksey. I'm the head of XM Community here at Qualtrics. And today I am joined by one of my most favorite colleagues. I know I shouldn't play favorites, but Pelin Aylangan. Pelin, hi, how are you today?
Great, Michael. It's great to be with you.
It's great to talk to you. Any chance I get to talk to you is a welcome one. For those people in the community who maybe weren't a part of our previous conversation that we had, would you mind doing a brief introduction of yourself and the work you do at Qualtrics?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. The XM community is such an important part of what we're going to be talking about today, which is product experience and Signal. Like many of you, I used to be a Qualtrics customer. I had a team of customer success managers who used Qualtrics to run our success program. So I've certainly been in your seats and in your shoes, and it's now great to be here at Qualtrics running the product experience program, which loosely has kind of three pillars to it. We run our customer advisory boards and councils on a quarterly basis. It's an important way for us to hear what our customers are thinking about for their XM programs, the directions that they are headed in, so that as we think about our longer term product roadmap, we are in tune and in sync with the direction that our customers are headed. The second piece that we run is, and many of you may have responded to our surveys, within our product, as you're using the Qualtrics platform, you may be asked to give feedback. And so my team runs that methodology and all the feedback that comes through that. And then the third program that we run is the product ideation and evolve program, which we're going to be talking about today. I am based in Seattle, and I love the fact that we are this podcast name is Communi-tea, because I also have an interest in tea when I'm not working for Qualtrics.
That's right. That's right. I forgot that you had mentioned that last time we spoke on one of our community conversations. That's a topic that we could dedicate a whole episode to. I'm a big tea drinker. Most of our community members are familiar with the process of submitting ideas to Qualtrics through the community. The XM community has been in place for many years. And on our previous platform, which was powered by another provider, we had a different process in place. But essentially, the end result and the desired end state was the same. We wanted customers to share their feedback and ideas with us on how we can improve the product experience, make the product better for customers, to hear what customers think about the products that we're putting out there and developing. And now on our new platform, we have a brand new program, which you mentioned before, called Evolve, which is really exciting for many reasons. One, we have essentially removed the middleman, and feel free to correct anything I'm saying here or any of my characterization of this, but putting myself in the shoes of the customer, the previous process, while it was great, involved customers posting ideas, posting feedback to the community. The community team would synthesize that feedback, submit it to the product team, and the customers had the knowledge that their feedback was being passed on. With this new iteration of Evolve, being able to submit ideas directly through Evolve on the community means customers are able to see directly what they are submitting. They're not relying on community members to synthesize or collect any information as an additional step to pass it on. And there's this additional layer of transparency that is visible now, where everybody can see essentially this table of ideas and feedback and what's been submitted and what's in progress and what's being planned. I think it's fabulous. I know that a lot of our community members have reacted positively to it. Maybe we could just start by talking a little bit about what prompted the change and some of the plus points. And like I said, if my characterization from a community perspective was not correct, be sure to tell me.
No, you hit it spot on. I think, and I'll talk a little bit broadly about just product experience and product organizations. And hopefully this will help our community members as they think about the programs that they are running, whether it's a CX program, EX program, or even a PX program like ours. The fundamental question and the insights that have to enable our PMs is they have to make a decision on what do we build next, right? And each of them have their own responsibility areas, whether it's platform capabilities, our CX products, our EX products, our brand experience, or our market research products. And so the job of my team, and when we think about redesigning a program like Evolve, is how can I bring together product signal? And we think about those signals in terms of solicited feedback. So as a member, as a Qualtrics user, if you are in the product and you get one of our feedback surveys, I'm soliciting feedback from you, and I'd like to get that feedback in the moment. That provides certain signal to our PMs. But we also know that you may not be in the product necessarily, but you just have this idea. You met with your internal stakeholders in your program and you say, God, it would be really great if the Qualtrics platform could do this. Well, you don't want to wait to use the platform and potentially get one of our pop-up surveys. You want the ability as a user to have a channel that you can submit that feedback to. And though that is, in our case, that's the Evolve program. So that's the unsolicited feedback. We also have other channels. You may be interviewed by one of our vendors to provide feedback on whether you decided to renew your Qualtrics license or not, right? That's also product feedback for us. So when it comes to Evolve, we had to design the new system with two things in mind. One, how can we, to your point, Michael, make it more transparent, easier for our community members to submit an idea and to know the status of their idea. I have seen programs, I won't name any company names, where you submit a form and you get an acknowledgement that your idea has been submitted, but you have no visibility into the status of that. So you're not quite sure, did somebody at that company actually see that? What's the status of it? And so forth. We wanted to go one step further for our community members and say, we're going to provide more transparency. If you're taking the time to have given us feedback or to have submitted an idea, we owe it to you to provide more transparency than what you previously had on what the status of that idea is. Now, that comes with certain responsibilities for us. I have to make sure as a program leader that the other side of the coin, which is how can product managers understand all of this signal and understand what is the most important? Because we get ideas all the time. They're listening to the market. They're looking at what competitors are doing. They're looking at the direction of certain industries. And so when we designed Evolve, we said, well, it's not necessarily the customer that's got the highest contract value attached to their name is going to have the best idea. How can we put together an algorithm that allows these ideas to be weighted, right? So things like, excuse me, is this feature request or this idea, how relevant is it to the program that our customers are trying to run? Some of our customers will say, if you don't submit this or if you don't develop this idea, I can't run my program without it. It's important for our product managers to know that. We know we are heavily invested in certain industries. We look at those ideas very closely because we want to be the leader in certain industries. We look at whether the person submitting the idea is saying to our frontline team members, hey, I'm going to go consider a competitor. That is additional signal to us. And so that's an improved piece where our product managers can now look at these ideas and see the ones that are the most relevant or kind of bubbling to the top. And we let things, percolate for a while, allow other customers to also vote on those ideas. So as members of the community, you can see the idea, you can see the number of upvotes that an idea currently has. It may not have been your idea, but you can also vote on other people's ideas. Yep. And so what happens when all of this signal comes in, whether it's through that solicited survey feedback or the ideas that are coming in and being streamed in every day, is our product managers will look through those ideas as part of their quarterly planning process. Now, I have to say, we can't do everything.
Right.
We
Yeah.
balance the allocation of our resources, and we will always develop our products by innovating and looking at where industry is headed, macro trends, but we'll also take a fair look at the ideas that our community members and users are submitting. And our product managers, while it may not be perfectly balanced, with Evolve at a minimum, they can tell which ideas are more important and which ones our customers are asking for that would help them drive more value from their Qualtrics investments.
I'm glad you brought up that point about not being able to action every single idea. That's tough for, I think, anybody in any company.
Right.
As I think one additional unique differentiator about Qualtrics is that we have this additional layer of being an experience management company. And so you'd mentioned before, having this additional layer of transparency adds an additional factor you have to take into consideration about making sure that we are, replying to these ideas, taking them into consideration, acknowledging them, knowing that we're an experience management company and knowing that we can't action everything. I was going to ask you, the tough question that everybody has to ask themselves: how do you decide when to action an idea and when to put an idea in the parking lot, for example, for a later date? Because it is, every company, no matter how big you are, is resource constrained, and it's also perhaps not a realistic expectation that you're going to be able to action every idea. That might not result in a great product experience in the end. But I'm curious to know for you how, both at Qualtrics, or maybe you can speak to this in general in the tech industry, what should be the deciding criteria? What sort of methodology or internal decision-making flowchart should you use to decide?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a little bit of art and science. I'm not the product managers who decide, but I think it's a combination of what am I hearing from these users, right? And we, like I said, we don't hear from the entire user population, but everybody has taken the time to provide the feedback. And our product managers will triangulate a specific idea with, obviously, the number of people who are asking for that, because obviously there's an experience gap if you're telling us to do something. And they'll look at kind of overall satisfaction that we are getting from our quantitative studies for that feature area, if you will, or we call them, platform or service areas. So for example, the survey builder, they might look and say, well, overall, our customers, our users are really dissatisfied with our survey builder capabilities. Now let me see the list of ideas and which ones I could address in my next, product priority review that would hopefully lead to higher satisfaction. Now, of course, they have to balance that. It might be a really great idea, but it might take 4 engineers, 6 weeks of coding to address that. And this, I think, goes to, I'll talk about another one of our programs, which is the preview program. Our product managers try to get as much feedback as possible from our users before our products are released, so that we are building and releasing products that work, that are lovable, and so forth. And so this is also an invitation to the community members. If you're not part of our preview program, that's an additional way for you to provide feedback to Qualtrics before products become generally available. So going back to the original thing, it's a combination of how do I decipher the signal to be able to say what is the most important, and do I have enough resources to build that out. Now, one thing about Evolve, and I would encourage everyone who is submitting an idea, if you just put in kind of a one-line sentence and say, improve visualizations, our product managers have a hard time understanding exactly what you'd like. Is it the color of the visualizations? Is it you want different charts? So the more that you can explain the context or what you're really trying to do by having the additional capability that's reflected in your idea submission, that will mean so much to our product managers. It will actually help them decide faster. When it comes to, and I'll share a little bit about our solicited feedback. The biggest challenge, as you mentioned, Michael, with experience management programs, it's not so much the listening piece, it is the understanding. And in our case, our product managers have to understand, where is the strongest signal coming from? If I have to build something next, what should I prioritize? What are customers asking for? And then it's the act. And we have two ways of acting. One is, if you as a user give us feedback through our solicited in-product surveys, we're doing some really exciting things now with generative AI to be able to decipher the open text feedback that you provide us, and then determine what is the best way to respond to that user and act on that feedback. In some cases, we see that the feedback may actually be more of or their source of dissatisfaction may actually be a configuration issue. It's how they set up Qualtrics within their organization. And the generative AI tools allow us to distinguish between what might be a configuration issue, what might be improvements related to our online support or documentation, or what might actually be a feature request, an idea that we want to evaluate and evolve. And so one of the ways that we're going to improve the experiences of our users as an experience management company is to say, when one of our users gives us feedback and it is actionable, right? Sometimes our users will say, it's all good, and so I don't have to necessarily respond to that. But if my generative AI tools can decipher the feedback and make a distinction between a configuration or a technical issue, support documentation issue, training issue, or a feature request, we will respond to users and make sure that that feedback gets to the right team, or we follow up with our users to get them the help that they need to improve their experience with the Qualtrics platform.
I did get to see, so for people listening to this podcast or watching it, I did get to see a quick demo of the AI capability that you're talking about. You showed it to me, and I think it's a perfect use case for AI. AI is one of those things that is everyone's talking about, everyone's implementing it in different ways. And I think the way that it's being implemented here, especially in this example you're talking about, is the perfect use case for it. Really, really smart technology and a great application of the technology.
Yeah, and I think the other piece, Bruce Temkin, my colleague who leads the XM Institute, he's like, the doctor and the guru of XM.
Yes.
His advice to me as a XM program leader has always been, don't get fixated on a score. It's less important whether the score has moved by 1 point or 5 points. It's about, what are you learning and what are you doing about it? And so the AI capabilities that we're even kind of layering on top of Evolve to say, of all the ideas, so product manager, you got 50 ideas this quarter. Let me use AI capabilities to pull out some themes for you so that you can understand what's going on in the forest. Yes, each of these ideas in Evolve is a tree that we would like you to make a decision upon. But here's thematically what our customers are asking for. And again, that will be another way that our product managers will understand the signal. But yeah, there's some really exciting things that can be done with the Qualtrics platform and AI that I would encourage our community members to also consider as part of their programs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another question for you, and I don't know if I should classify this as also a tough question, but I think some customers might be curious to know how we balance customer feedback that's coming through Evolve and the product roadmap that's being determined by what's submitted through Evolve with the product roadmap or product features that are being determined by Qualtrics product managers, or that are the internal ideation process that's happening that comes from our own internal research and best practices on how we think we can improve the product. I know that's a big question and we have a few minutes left, but can you speak a little bit about how we balance those two avenues and
Sure. Yeah,
future development?
Yeah, one of the reasons that, Qualtrics is kind of the creator and the leader in the XM category is our product managers do have visions for, their product areas. They meet with customers, they meet with senior leaders, executives. Our executives are meeting with executives all the time. They're looking at macro economic trends and saying, like, where is human resources and people experience and employee experience as a discipline and a function headed. And so they may have ideas that they will put forward to our annual planning process or our quarterly planning process. And then layered on top of that, they will use the ideas in Evolve to say, where are some of the major experience gaps? Can I solve them while I'm also solving for or creating products for some of these other areas? I think what's really interesting and something that our community members should keep in mind is that you may have an idea and you submit it to Evolve. And that's very interesting. And the product managers may follow up with you to say, oh, this is very interesting. Tell me more about it. Exactly how would you use it? Or our UX researchers may dig deeper to understand the context in which it's really being used. And we may end up delivering that capability as a feature. But if you were to look at the feature in the future, it may not be exactly the idea as it was submitted into Evolve. And so these things do morph over time to say, hey, we're going to take a set 3 or 4 ideas in Evolve that seem to be related to a similar use case, and we're going to roll them out as one feature or one capability. And so it's interesting to see that evolution over time. But I think our users will continue to see Qualtrics innovating on our platform to really push the category to innovate, but also keeping in mind that we have users that have experience gaps. And again, my job and my team's job is to allow product managers to understand where the biggest gaps are, where we can satisfy the most number of customers by responding to certain ideas and building out those capabilities.
That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear it's not just a binary sort of thing, and that it's really an amalgam of all of those inputs all together.
Yeah. And I think, looking at all SaaS companies, you'll probably see some variation of that. I don't think there's any company out there, unless maybe you're ordering a specific hamburger, that will give you exactly what you are asking for every single time.
That is very
in the world of software, it's a combination of I'm going to push the boundaries, I'm going to innovate, I'm going to build things that people might not necessarily be asking for yet. It's the old, Henry Ford quote, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have wanted a faster horse. Right. So you lose innovation there. And I think we'll have a combination of innovation and really pushing the XM category, but again, also trying to address the existing experience gaps in the platform.
That's a very good point and a very apt quote for this discussion as well. A lot of our community members are sometimes new Qualtrics customers, or they are just beginning their journey to collect user information, collect feedback from customers. As somebody who's been collecting feedback and analyzing feedback for a long time, what are maybe the top 3 things you would recommend that people do in terms of best practices when they are beginning their journey to collect and synthesize and analyze customer feedback and suggestions and information?
I would say the first thing, which we spent a lot of time doing as well, is talk to your internal stakeholders on how they expect to use those insights and the decisions that they're going to be making with them. In our case, we met very closely with our product managers and said, how do you think about product experience, right? If you're going to get feedback while a user is in a product, what are the questions we should be asking? How do you think about experience, right? Is it just about the user interface, or are there other elements of it? Like, can you complete your task? Were you able to get insights out of the platform? So spend a lot of time really understanding your stakeholders and how they expect to use the data. The second one I would say is, if you are running a program where you're going to be synthesizing information about the same topic, in my case, it's product, looking at the granularity of that information across those sources. So for example, when you are in our product and you are submitting feedback, I know exactly where you are in the product. I know whether you're using Survey Builder or whether you're using distribution lists. If I get product feedback from an online review and we pull in data from G2 and Capterra, it's not going to be at the Survey Builder or the distribution list level. Those reviews are going to be at a CX or EX level. So how do I bring those two together and make that meaningful within a Qualtrics dashboard? So really taking some time to say, what are going to be my sources of feedback, and can I marry them in an environment where my stakeholders are going to be able to decipher, and it's at the right level of granularity. And the third one, which I mentioned earlier, is don't get fixated on a score. Really think about, as you're collecting that feedback, what are you learning and what are you doing about it? And there's two ways, or kind of two levels of that. One is, are you acting on that feedback back to the person who provided it? So again, using some of the generative AI stuff, we're able to do that more. But then holistically and thematically, what are you learning? What are the trends? What are some of the signals? And how can you as an organization, it's called outer loop, right? How can you as an organization address maybe some of the systematic causes? It may be caused by a process, right? It may be caused by the platform itself, and to be able to understand that and fix that so that in the future, you're not necessarily getting the same repetitive negative feedback. And again, if you are, asking for that feedback, there is this implicit assumption that you are going to act on it. If you don't demonstrate that you're acting on it, then I think that people will become kind of disenfranchised or disillusioned with your program and not want to submit it. Similarly, as I said before, right? I submitted an idea. I have no idea whether anyone at that company actually saw my idea. And so that kind of feedback mechanism to the people who you're collecting feedback from, that even though you may not be able to act on it, just acknowledging that someone read their feedback, I think goes a long way to maintaining that trust.
Absolutely. I think the general theme of what are you learning and what are you doing with that information is also just generally good life advice. I can think of so many areas where I could apply that, both at work and outside of work.
Exactly. And you can't do everything, right? But you can say, hey, what's the most important? And again, this goes back to how do you decipher the signal and make folks understand like what's the most important? Because if signal is coming from all different directions, people could just get overwhelmed and want to shut it down completely. And my job is to make that signal as appetizing as possible, so that people can easily digest it and consume it. And I think that holds true for companies who are running employee experience programs and listening to their employees about what they could be doing better to deliver better workplace experience or an employee experience. It holds true for voice of customer programs, patient experience programs, citizen experience programs, whatever your particular domain is. I think it's good advice.
Absolutely. Well, Pelin, I know we could talk for a long time about this topic. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've given our listeners on the XM community a lot to think about. Perhaps we can have a part 2 of this conversation at some point and continue the discussion.
I would love that. Our program is called Evolve, and the concept there is, give us your ideas so that we can evolve the Qualtrics platform. We will continue to even iterate on Evolve in terms of what our community members can submit, how they submit, what they can see, and so forth. So I'd love to come back in a future podcast and share more with the community.
Absolutely. I will also include, when we post this podcast on the community, I'll include information about the preview program you mentioned, and I will also tag you on the community in the post. And if people have questions, they can post those questions on the community for you. Thank you, Pelin, again, for the conversation today. It was a pleasure to speak with you as always. Thank you so much for being part of the XM Community podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. It was great.
Thank you.